I'm Leigh Hornbeck. I write about real estate for the Times-Union. I've done it for about a decade, and at no other time am I hearing from realtors that these are crazy times. These are times like they've never seen before. We're going to talk about what you need as you enter the real estate market. If you're sitting there and you're thinking about putting your house on the market, there are a lot of steps in selling property in New York State. There's a lot of people that get involved, lawyers and title searchers and appraisers and inspectors and real estate agents. And we want to talk about a number of things that come up when it's time to sell property. And one of those is the role of the real estate agent. We're going to think about when it comes time to sell your house, are you going to go it alone? Are you going to hire a professional? Do you do your own auto mechanics? Do you do your own doctoring? Should you hire a real estate agent? So we've got some experts we assembled. Every time I say assemble, I think Avengers Assemble. So these are our Avengers today, all of whom have had a long history in this area and in this field. So Kathy Cooley, a licensed associate real estate broker for Howard Hanna, and Angelina Cugini Gerard, also a licensed real estate salesperson for Howard Hanna. We have Laura Burns, who's kind of our Yoda. She's been around this market for a long time. Her role is not as a realtor, but as the president and CEO of the Greater Capital Association of Real Estate Agents. And Elizabeth Byrne, who is our legal eagle today. And we're going to ask her some specific questions about how the lawyering part is done of a real estate transaction. I'm going to take questions after we have a discussion here, so it'll be at the end. And I'm also going to, in here, announce some winners of our gift cards. I would ask that if you have a question, put it in the chat. If you have your question directed at someone specific on the panel, please let me know that. And that I'll be relaying those questions to our panel. So let's get started. I want to talk about what you do before you list, before you even take pictures. And so, Angela, I can see your shiny face this morning. So let's talk about what sellers should keep in mind when they are thinking about listing. Before you list, what things are important to know and to talk about?
So it's important to know, as a real estate agent, it's important for me to educate my sellers as to the fast-paced market. You have to really prepare them accordingly and let them know that they are going to be in a market where when they do put their house on the market, it's going to have a ton of activity. They're going to have a lot of offers. They're going to be under contract very quickly. So they have to have, step 1, 2, and 3 kind of in place to some degree. And I talk to them about upfront, because it's not a market where you're sitting on the market for 3 months and you have time to kind of sit back and figure out where you're going or what your next step may be. So I try to educate them upfront on that. I also try to educate them on, the amount of offers that they're probably going to get on the property and how we're going to kind of navigate them to get them to their end result and the most beneficial with the most beneficial situation for them. So if they have some obstacles to overcome, I'd like to know that upfront as far as, moving, timeline, because we can definitely work that into the negotiations in a market like this, but we have to know that up front. So before I go anywhere, I sit with them and I explain to them, the ABC process is going to be a little bit more fast-paced than we've ever been used to.
Kathy, what are you seeing? What I'm hearing from Angela is don't go selling your house before you have a next place to live, right? What Angela is saying is you don't want to be stuck. So how are some ways that you prepare your sellers for that?
We discussed that with them day one. There's no question about it. We don't want to leave them homeless if possible. But the point of the story here is that making sure that if they do get that incredible offer, that they do have an alternative, whether it's an apartment to go to, a family member's home to go to. But if not, then the buyer is just going to have to work at the seller's schedule. It's very important to make sure that if a seller wants to sell their home, because the market is very hot right now, that perhaps we even put into their listing contingent on the seller finding a home of choice. That way the buyer knows up front that they may not be able to close until that seller does find a home to go to. It's
So the
managing
seller
their
has some,
expectations.
so the seller
I've
has
also
some power there.
negotiated post occupancies, you negotiate, every deal is different. You can negotiate post occupancies while the seller is finding a house. I've had that in the last couple of years where we look at 17 offers and the one that's most flexible is the one, it may not be the highest price, but they're the most flexible and it is more suitable for our seller. So we may take that offer because they gave us 5 months to find the house.
Correct.
So, the sellers do have some options because they are getting different offers presented to them with different timelines. And we talk about the one that's most suitable for them.
Let's take a step back for a moment and turn to Laura Burns, because, I feel like we're all enmeshed in this and we know what the real estate market is like. But if you're just coming into it, I want to give Laura a chance to talk about what we mean when we say things are pretty crazy right now. Laura, can you talk to us a little bit about numbers, what we mean when we say inventory?
Sure, Leigh. First of all, thank you for having me. Good morning, everyone. I'm really thrilled to be here. Yeah, the capital region, greater capital region, which spans about 10 counties in this region. So all real estate being local, we're expanding all the time on what we define as local. Right now, we have approximately 26 days on market, which means that most sellers really should clean out their attics and garages before they even decide to list, because then they start just going crazy, because that's a quick time. We are down to historic low inventory, which is 1.3 months of inventory, which means about 4 weeks of inventory. So a lot of that impact is from the builders not being able to swing the hammers as fiercely as they could during 2 years of COVID. And the construction industry really, as far as residential, has not made the full comeback from 2008 and 2009, which we call the dark days of mortgage real estate. So we're waiting for them to catch up. It's going to take years because they just can't put that many houses on the market all at once. So our new construction median price is in the 400,000s, between 4 and 5, and for median price for existing single family home right now in the capital region is 250,000. It was 230,000 this time last year.
A significant jump, and it varies widely county by county, correct?
Absolutely, and down to which city, town, or village you're in, and the agents and the realtors are handling often now multiple offer situations, which these ladies will be able to describe what occurs with that, and it's a very tricky process, and you have to make sure everyone is treated fairly. And as Angela was saying, it doesn't always come out to be the person who bids the highest gets the home, which really upsets all the other people but who have bid on it.
Laura, talk to us about, again, in the theme here we have of before you list, interviewing realtors, who you should choose, how you should choose. I think a lot of us choose based on referral. We have a friend who worked with a realtor, thought they were great, trusted them, and that's who they go with. What are some questions that you suggest people ask when they're talking to who they want to represent them as their listing agent?
Well, I would say for the most part, you're exactly right. Referrals are a large part of any real estate agent's or realtor's business. The sellers and buyers also should, I would say, conduct some interviews. You're always going to get, well, my cousin used this person, exactly what you said. But sit down with the realtors, and the realtors are all ready for that. And realtors are trained, they're professionals. They know going in that all of them have presentation packages ready to, and they will do an analysis on your neighborhood, on your area and on your home. They will run some comps, and they have access to the multiple listing service that they can do that with. So they have a lot of local knowledge. All of our members deal with the entire region because it's really not that big when you're going from one county to another. So they are knowledgeable about it. But again, you want to interview. I would say that sellers should bring them into their home, give them an interview, let them see what the realtor has to say for them.
How do you handle how you're going to pay a realtor? What should you expect, and how does that work? Is it a flat fee? Is it negotiable for we're talking here about listing?
Commissions are always negotiable, no matter what the transaction is. And so that's again, you want to meet with your realtor, you want to discuss it. Whether you're the buyer or the seller, you want to talk to them about this and get a good feeling for what role the commission plays in the transaction. Particularly sellers want to negotiate. They can come in and have a discussion with the realtor while they're conducting the interview, and also ask what goes into that. The realtors spend a lot of time. Out of that commission amount comes a lot of things that the realtors have to pay for. The least of which is the association and the multiple listing service tool. They have access to all kinds of technology tools, the lockbox system, the multiple listing service, the taxes. That all they use that commission money to access all of those tools and to take the education that they need to be as sharp and professional as possible. So it's nice to have a chat and honest discussion with the sellers and the buyers regarding commission. It's always negotiable.
We're going to come back around to the role that the realtor plays, especially in this kind of market. Kathy, let me start with you for this next question. What do you say to people who are considering listing their home in terms of improvements they should make, staging they should do? What role does that play right now? How much should you do? What are your kind of do's and don'ts in terms of getting ready to sell?
With regard to all the discussions about multiple offers and so forth, you still have to go back to the basics of real estate. You can't let that mar what you're going to do to prepare your home. The word of the century is declutter. It has to happen, whether it's this market or the market 10 years ago or the one that's going to come up. Decluttering, cleaning your home to sparkle is key, inside and out, upstairs and down. We're talking from the basement to the garage. If you still want to get top dollar for your home, I don't care what market you're in, that's something that needs to be done. In terms of big improvements, that's something your realtor will discuss with you. You're not going to perhaps right now completely redo a bathroom, but do you want to maybe update a little bit? A little bit goes a long way, whether it's a gallon of paint or just replacing a vanity. Things like that are still important in this market. Staging is key. There is no question whether your realtor is going to do it with you or, depending upon the home, sometimes even these vacant homes, it makes such a difference to get them staged. And we have some amazing stagers right now in the Capital District that we work with, either ones that just do vacant homes or ones that come in and, like decorators, will bring some of their things in to enhance what you already have. But every single one of the things we're talking about will get you much higher dollars in your pocket at the end of the day.
One of the things I've always heard is almost everybody who's selling a furnished home could stand to take some of their things out and put them in storage, take some furniture out and put it in storage. Angela, do you want to add to that? Are there some kind of favorite things that you've developed over the years?
I think that especially in these last couple of years, the staging part and the decluttering and the really, making it look bright and clean. And we are doing so many virtual shows. I did 5 virtual showings this weekend with 5 different customers, wrote offers and all that. So a lot of agents are doing virtual showings because you have a lot of out-of-towners and houses are hitting the market on Monday and we know they're going to be sold by Thursday and they just can't get here. So I mean, you're doing your photography be important, that the house shows at its absolute best, because we are doing a lot of virtual showings. And as a buyer's agent, I want to make sure that the house is being shown accurately for a virtual showing to the potential buyer, because I don't want to bring a contract to a seller that when they get here, they may be like, this wasn't this isn't what I thought it looked like. So I think that, the staging part of it, the decluttering is so much more important now than it has ever been, because of that. So I think that, again, you don't have to do major renovations right now. Like, I'm not telling people to replace kitchens and do things like that. First of all, you can't get contractors. They're all busy. So if I go to a seller and say, the kitchen's a little outdated, you're talking months, you're talking 3-6 months. And obviously the market's so fast moving that that's not really productive for the seller right now to do major renovations. But again, like Kathy said, painting, decluttering, cleaning the house from top to bottom. I always tell people, pack like you're moving and leave as little as possible. Less is more right now. So I say, pack like you're moving, get everything out. I know that you're going to be living here while the house is being shown. You're not going to be on the market for long. So you're going to have, a week of this, and then through inspection and appraisal and that kind of stuff, you can kind of go back to living a little more normally, and it doesn't have to be, an absolute 10 while we're doing going through those steps.
Angela, let me stay with you for this next question. I think another really hot topic for everybody is when the market is like this, and I'm hearing my friend sold for way over asking, and then I have another friend who was trying to buy and kept bidding 40 and 50,000 over, and it wasn't working out. They weren't getting it. How do you deal with pricing in a market like that? I mean, I know Laura mentioned comps, and so for comps, we're talking about the house that's comparable to yours, a collection of houses that are comparable. But it also seems like there's some amount of like magic that goes in. Let's demystify that a little bit and talk to me about how you price.
So when I go to list a house, I obviously do my comparables. I keep them as recent as possible because the market is, moving so quickly. You used to pull comps from 6 months ago. I'm really pulling comps from 30 days ago, 45 days ago. When I go in to price a house, I explain to the seller it is key important that my goal is to get the most money for my seller. So that, as representing the seller, that is our goal. So I explain to my seller, if you listen to me on pricing, you're going to position yourself in the market in the best position to attract as many buyers as possible. And that will give you the probability of going into a multiple offer. And when you create the multiple offer situation where you have more than one person that wants one thing, that's where the price is driving up. So people have said to me, well, if you're telling me that and the market's so crazy, let's list the house $50,000 higher. And I explained to them, what happens there is you shut the door to potential buyers that would come through the door to look at the house. So now instead of having 35 showings in 4 days, you may only have 17, and you're not going to create the competitive buyer side, which then drives the multiple offer, which is obviously getting the seller's top dollar for their house. So you cannot overprice in this market. It actually is counterproductive to the seller. So it is very important that you price where your comps are coming in, and you're most likely going to, and I tell people, you're most likely going to sell for between 5 and 8%, maybe even 10% over asking price.
Kathy, do you want to get into that? I would add to that question for you specifically. We have wildly different sub-markets within our big market, like the difference between Schenectady County and Saratoga County. So if you could talk to us about that, and also how this is not as big of an issue right now, but certainly it'll come back. It's been here before. When you lower a price, how do you talk to your client, your seller, about when it's time to do that? Go ahead, Kathy.
We kind of have this, it's a quasi little rule of a 10-10 rule. We're talking about it, within about 10 days to 2 weeks at the absolute most. If you're not getting many showings, or you're getting a lot of showings and no offers, that's an immediate indication that it's time to discuss a price reduction. At that point, you actually revisit the comparables once again to see what's currently on the market, days on market, exactly, what those other comparables started with, where they ended with. It's a bigger analysis. You're talking to other realtors to see what happened with their homes, looking at the updates in other people's homes, revisiting yours to make sure that you are giving your sellers an accurate indicator of where their next price should be. There are a few price reductions in this market, actually, and I'm seeing a few of them right now because we are experiencing a little more inventory, a little uptick in that because it's the spring market. But it's definitely not willy-nilly. It is definitely where you are using your expertise with your homes that are currently on the market, pending, and also the closed are the ones that really tell the tale.
Yeah.
So anyway, that about 10 days to 2 weeks would be the key that you start to talk to someone about that pricing reduction.
Interesting. Before we go any further, I want to pause for a second. I want to announce some winners. So we had some gift cards to give away, some opportunities to buy too many vegetables and then watch half of them die. No, don't do that. Listen, learn from what I have done. So to Hewitt's, our winners are Joanne Shea and Holly Brooker. It'd be fun if it was Broker. I don't think it's Broker. I think it's not. It's Brouker. So Joanne and Holly, someone will be in touch with you from the Times Union within the next 24 hours to tell you how you get your gift card. Thank you for entering and thank you for being here this morning. So let's get back into it. I feel like Elizabeth is like, when is it time for the lawyer? Let's talk about when the lawyer comes in. And we're going to talk more about should I or should I not hire a real estate agent. I'm going to let these ladies make their case. But the one thing you're going to need in New York State, regardless of how you do your transaction, is a lawyer. Elizabeth, talk to us a little bit about what closings have been like. I'm hearing from people that it's going to take a while to close. There's somewhat of a backlog. I don't know if that's what you're seeing, but what can people expect at the closing table?
Well, at the closing, first of all, the backlogs we're experiencing now are not nearly what we had, say, in 2020. I think people have hired more help, streamlined the process to try to get things moving quicker. When 2020 first hit, I just don't think everyone was prepared for it. The biggest backlog, I would say right now, comes with title. So most attorneys won't order the title search until inspections are complete, because the search is usually done by a third party, and we don't want to have the buyer incur an additional cost if the deal is not going to go through because of an inspection issue. So I will tell my buyers, please, as soon as you know those inspections are done, let's get the title search going. And that's one thing I don't think everybody is necessarily prepared for, is the process of getting to the closing table. You know, sometimes people will think, okay, I've got a contract, inspections are done, can I close tomorrow? And, you know, there's still usually mortgage commitment, clear to close, title. But, you know, at the closing table, it's lately been pretty much the same. For a while, we had sellers, you know, either not attending or in a completely different room, you know, and just buyer and attorney. People are starting to come back to closings, but I'm not sure that they'll ever be the same with, you know, a whole bunch of people in the room sitting together talking about, you know, the house and things like that. I think maybe that has forever changed, but we'll see.
I interviewed someone yesterday who talked about, it was her first house, and she brought her whole family dressed in their Sunday best. She was so excited. And closings lost that a little bit, you know, entirely during the pandemic, as, you know, parking lot transactions, and it was a weird time. So, I mean, I'm getting some questions in the chat, and I want to come back to this because this is what we promised to deliver, right? Laura, let me put this to you. There might be an argument to be made. Houses are selling quick. Everybody goes by kind of the anecdotal, I saw what happened down the street with my cousin's wife, you know, like that kind of like game of telephone. I could sell my house myself. Why do I need a realtor? I want to hear the argument about what a realtor lends to your transaction that you might be at sea if you choose to do yourself.
Well, thank you, Leigh. There's actually quite a few reasons. And first of all would be that since Elizabeth just got done, is that selling your home is a complex legal transaction. It's not as easy as everyone thinks. There are a lot of steps. There are a lot of professionals in the chain of the transaction that a realtor pulls together. And you've got first of all, so as Kathy and Angela mentioned, perhaps you're going to have a stager come in. You might not even know that you need it because everyone thinks their house is the Taj Mahal, of course. But so that would be the realtor would coordinate the stager. The realtor would coordinates the title with the council, the inspectors, the mortgage coordination. All of that is, I mean, I bought a house 2 years ago, right under COVID. So I might be the last person on earth that paid under list, but I can't tell you how many times I called my realtor. What is going on? What is this? What is that? Because I have a job and I'm working and I can't run home every time the home's going to be shown. And again, another thing the realtors will do, of course, is weed out unqualified buyers. You're going to have, when people try to sell it themselves, they don't know who's coming in there. A realtor is bringing in someone that they have already reviewed. They know they're a qualified buyer. They're not wasting anybody's time. And they've done some, gathered some information. It's not they're bringing somebody in who's just casing your house. If they have, this is a full-time job for them. They have a lot of networks. They have access to a lot of tools and technology to manage the transaction. They price it right, as Angela and Kathy were saying. Again, someone will look and say, well, down the street, my neighbor's house sold for X. When? Oh, 3 years ago, they got this. And so, and again, because they're at the barbecue in the backyard talking about it. So again, the realtors are the professionals. This is what they do. This is their living. They have all of these abilities and knowledge. They take a lot of education. It's not just about getting their license. They take a lot of education through the association and elsewhere. They have a fiduciary responsibility to the buyers and sellers, which is a legal responsibility to represent them in addition to following the code of ethics, which is required of all realtors. They take out the emotion also. It is, God bless you, just done it. It's a very emotional transaction. And, the realtors get by that and say, hey, this is what your house will go for. I mean, we're at 98% of ask price right now, which is astounding, which means that there are quite a few above ask price transactions happening. So to pull that all together so that you can continue to go to work every day and not be worried about what is going on with my transaction, you would really need a realtor. They're the ultimate professional to do this.
Can I add something
Please.
to that real quick? There's
Please,
another
Kathy.
thing we have to talk about, which is safety precaution as well. When you're trying to sell your home on your own and you're just there by yourself and letting anybody in, you know what? There's a problem with that. Vetting somebody, making sure a realtor has a qualified buyer. The realtors were very professional. No one's shopping around with unqualified buyers right now. And so when someone makes an appointment to see your home and it's with a realtor or it's listed with a realtor, you know that those buyers that are coming into this home are pre-qualified and ready to purchase that home. Getting your home sold seems easy. It's getting to the closing table that's the key, which is all of those steps and more that Laura just discussed. There's a litany this long, sorry, couldn't see my bottom hand, that goes boom, 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 boom. We are the producer. We are the director of the show. And there are so many steps to get to that closing table. And as you said, everybody's working. Laura, when you purchased your home, you had a full-time job. You needed to rely on somebody else to make sure those steps were being handled professionally and in your best interest. And that was someone representing you as the buyer. The seller gets that same representation from their listing agent.
Angela, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would like to add to that. We also, as real estate agents, are gonna be able to get the sellers much more exposure. Not only, through our MLS, but through our other marketing tools, we have so many different marketing tools. Also, I work in an office with 60 agents. Kathy works in an office with, so you're gonna be able, as hiring a real estate agent is gonna give your house much more exposure than a for sale by owner. And we're gonna be able to navigate talking to agents in my office about the listing ahead of time. They already are lining up potential buyers to come in and look at the listing. So you're kind of creating the pre-marketing period, and also through the marketing period, you're gonna get just thousands of more views on your home being listed with a real estate agent, which is ultimately going to get you more money with less headache, in my opinion. So you don't have to deal with it. Like Kathy said, we're kind of navigating the ship. You're letting us put our professionalism to work for you and get you to a closing. And also we can guide you a little bit on what offers that does your average consumer know on paper what offer is actually better. It's over full price with 5% down, or it's over full price with 25% down. Your average consumer isn't going to know, what offer is stronger. And we can also navigate the closing time and those kind of things with them also. So there's so many more things involved than just throwing your house out there and getting an offer. And also, as real estate agents, we are definitely going to get you the most money for your house in this market.
Yeah, that's it. Listing your house is not so difficult. Selling your house is very difficult.
Exactly, correct.
Before we go to questions from the audience, we have some really good ones. Elizabeth, I have one more question for you. I've bought 2 houses, and I remember a stack of paper at the closing. I remember signing off on a bunch of also known as. My name had been misspelled different ways at different times and had been recognized as such. What are you seeing in terms of your many years in this business that messes up a closing most often? What's missing? What are people unprepared for when they get to closing that can delay it or scrap the deal?
A variety of different things. Sometimes people will tell me at the last minute, I didn't realize I needed to be at the closing. I thought I could e-sign all of the documents, even though there's a loan involved. And that's a new thing for me. And I think it's because e-signing has become so much more popular, and they might be, I don't know, in the Navy and on a boat and had absolutely no plans to attend the closing. So things like that. Walkthrough issues, if people don't get the house cleaned up in time, that's a big one. Sometimes not realizing that certified funds are needed, even though I know that we all say you cannot bring a personal check to closing, if they don't have a local bank. So we in this office try to send out reminders, maybe 4 or 5 reminders prior to closing, just saying, yes, you have to be there. No, you cannot have a personal checkbook. Please make sure your house is set to go. Things like that I think people get very stressed about the moving process and they just forget.
Yeah. One question that's come up here, I think is a good one. It was on my list too. The wisdom of a pre-inspection. When you're selling, Kathy, you can start with this if you'd like. Do you recommend that to your sellers to get a pre-inspection report? And I would imagine that probably varies a little bit on the type of property we're talking about, but go ahead.
That's true. If you're going into a very, very old home, one that really has not been updated, perhaps it's an old family home, and you get an idea that, there's a lot of issues such as mold in the attic that someone just might not know about, things like that. Sometimes we do recommend that actually. You do have to be prepared, however, when you do get that report, if there are what we call major items, that perhaps you may have to address them or at least disclose them. And that's fine to disclose them. And then it's a decision on the seller, you're working with their realtor as to what they would like to take care of, or obviously, if we now have knowledge as a listing agent, we have to make sure that that is disclosed on their property condition disclosures, or if they choose not to fill one out, if we know about latent defects in a home, we have to disclose that. But it is not a bad idea. If I was going to list my home, which I'm not yet, but if I was, I would probably have a pre-inspection. I think it's a great idea, especially because I don't want to be blindsided by certain things that might come up with a buyer and their
And
inspection.
Inspections are what? About how many dollars?
About
And
400,
550,
500
something like.
for everything.
That's what you should expect to pay. Yeah.
Well, it also depends if you're having a home inspection, pest inspection, radon test. But if you're adding in a well and a septic, then it's going to head up towards like a 750 or something like that. But when you talk about inspections, I am a believer. Buyers pay for the inspections. They're the one buying the home. They're the ones who want the look. But for instance, if someone hasn't pumped their septic in a very long time, or haven't had that looked at in a very long time, that to me is an important thing to take care of, that the seller should take care of, or I don't mean take care of it. They should at least consider having someone look at it before they list their home, because that could be a very high ticket item.
Right, right. Another question that's coming up here, I think is a good one. Do you find that appraisals are keeping up with today's escalating home prices? Or are appraisals falling short of selling prices? Angela, why don't you start there?
In the last 2 years, I've had one issue with an appraisal. And it was about $5,000 off, and we just negotiated it with the seller. So, I mean, that was about 1.5 years ago. So in the last year, I haven't had any issues with appraisals. One of the things as a selling side that I am doing is part of my negotiations is if somebody's overbidding on the house by $70,000, $80,000, I'm negotiating before we accept the contract that they're waiving the appraisal. So meaning the appraisal still has to happen, but if there's a difference in the purchase price and the appraised value, the buyer is absorbing that, meaning they have to come to the table with the additional funds. And what I'm doing there is protecting my seller from taking a crazy offer and then having to lower their price based on appraisal. So as buyers know in this market, they're probably overpaying for their houses. So I'm making them calling them to the table up front saying, yep, we're going to take your offer, but you have to understand that if there's a difference in appraisal, you are going to absorb that because you're overbidding on the house. The buyer knows they're overbidding on the house. So they have to take accountability for doing that, not the seller. So, I mean, it all depends on each individual situation.
I was just gonna, can I just add? Go ahead, Angela, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I was gonna say the appraisers, for the most part, the appraisers in this region are also members of the Realtor Association. And they are, because they're professionals as well, but with that, they get access to the multiple listing service, which again has about 4,300 agents on it right now and brokers. So these ladies close out a transaction. Bam, the appraiser has the most up-to-date information because they have access to the multiple listing service, which is a key factor because, as Angela mentioned earlier, the appraisers are only going back like 2 or 3 months, at most. It's just changing so much. So every time one of these 4,000 or so members closes out a transaction, they go into the multiple listing service, they enter what it sold for, so that the appraisers have it, and all of the particulars that may or may not be in there as contingent to the sale. So the appraisers have the most up-to-date information. So I would say in this region, where most of the appraisers are realtors as well, they are keeping up. It's tough. It's tough because it makes comps tough because you have 700 listings closed last month. Last year, this time it was almost 1,000. So they're still moving.
The other thing is I do find appraisers are calling the agents and saying, this house was listed at 425 and it sold for 500. Can you tell me a little bit of what happened during the I have gotten a lot of that, and I'll say I had 27 offers on it. I mean, that obviously there was a demand for somebody to pay that amount of money for the house. So you are communicating a little bit more with appraisers than as real estate agents than I ever have before. They are calling, they are questioning why the price got inflated so much, why it's so a high over asking price. And you just kind of explain to them the steps that happen throughout the negotiating process. And I think that helps them kind of come to their dollar amount.
Something else I want to talk about from the chat, but also we talk about this all the time, the prognosticating, right? The try to predict the future. You all have been in this business long enough to see things change radically. I mean, anyone who lived through the recession and was selling houses in the recession. So what do you see? Interest rates are starting to climb. We've got the inflation issue, of course, and so the Fed was trying to address that with interest rates. Do you see a change coming? I know I didn't prep you guys for this one, but do you see a change coming? And what do you think influences that? Angela, go ahead.
I think that you're going to find that the market, I don't feel that the absorption rate is going to change much. I don't feel that prices are going to drop dramatically with the interest rate changing. And my theory behind that is there's been so many people that have not been able to buy houses because of this. They're still in the marketplace. Housing is a necessity. So people have to buy houses. Do I feel that it may level off a hair and we may not have insane over asking price multiple offers? Yes. But do I feel that there's still going to be a demand for housing and multiple offers on listings? Yes. I just don't think it's going to continue at the extreme it has been for the last, year or so. I think with the interest rates rising, but I think it may take a while for that to actually happen because there are so many people that still have the necessity of buying. So I don't see interest rate. I mean, people have to buy houses. And the rental prices are so high. So when you're looking at renting or buying, it's still more beneficial at a higher interest rate to purchase a home.
And I read an article, I think it was in Forbes, because a lot of people have the idea that millennials would prefer to rent over buying. And this survey that Forbes published was indicated that about 57% of millennials still believe that they want to own a home at some point in time. That is the American dream. And as you saw on, I think it was 60 Minutes last week, they're trying to sell people on the idea that renting is the American dream. We got them in a house, they're in a home, they've got a yard, but they're renting. And as Angela said, the rents are increasing because of supply and demand. And so people still want to own a home. People are still coming up from the city now with our new normal of working wherever you want to work and not having to be right at the office. People love being at home, especially millennials.
We don't want to keep you much past 45 minutes to an hour, but there's some good questions coming up in here. And I'm going to take this question about comps because there's a couple referring to this. So when you have a super unique property, and I think that because of the range and inventory in the capital region, you'll have that. How do you address that when there don't seem to be any comps for, and I'll just describe this one person's house. There's a greenhouse, there's a barn, there's a whole lot of acreage, there's a house. So Kathy, go ahead and how you manage comps on that.
I just had that happen recently, just literally this week. And what you have to do is you actually have to go outside the area because that's what an appraiser will do. Sometimes the appraiser will use what's called the income method. But in our case, I had a very small town I was trying to give an analysis on, and I needed to give it to a corporation. And I had to go to the immediate area, and then I had to even go one more area around in order to create a market analysis for them. I had to go outside the school district. I had to go outside the town 2 times. It was quite extraordinary. But you do get an idea, but you have to use similar properties. So square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms, acreage, like you said, outbuildings with a barn, with a pole barn. You can always find some property. It just may not be in the immediate area of where that home is located. And then you do have to adjust. You have to adjust for certain things, just like you would a regular market analysis of its condition, of its updates. In this case, you just have to look for those properties and be a little more creative and move outside the immediate area of that neighborhood or that town, actually. But that's how you do that. I just did it this week.
Or use different properties that maybe combine, give you some of the aspects and try and kind of put value on different aspects.
Which is what an appraiser does, exactly.
Well,
Angela.
yeah, because you may not have the exact property, but you may have a property here that has similar amenities and then a property here, and you kind of have to use both of them and merge them into kind of one market analysis and pick and choose some of the items that you're getting from each property. And as real estate professionals, Kathy and I can definitely we've been in the business long enough. We've seen all sorts of properties, and I'm sure that, just our knowledge helps being able to price a property like that.
What Angela was saying before, which was very poignant about so many appraisers calling us, and they do all the time, but now even more. I love our appraisers. I have many that I call for advice all the time. When I say things like, this one has a pole barn, how much value should I put on that? This one has a 4-car garage, how much value should I put on that? It is incredible, their knowledge and how it works into our analysis as well.
One more, because you guys are sticking with me, my participants, so I just want to keep this going as long as you are happy to do it. This I'm going to bring up because I've seen it happen. So this is a potential seller who is selling in their neighborhood. It's a desirable neighborhood. Word has gotten around that they're thinking about listing. So the question is inevitably, well, I already have neighborhood interest. Do I need a realtor? And I feel like I know the answer to this, but I'm going to let you guys say it. And they're not looking at maximum price. They want to kind of sell to the right person. Angela, go ahead and start on that.
I mean,
does she need a realtor?
I think you need a real estate agent in this market, no matter what, more than you ever have, because it's such a competitive market, and buyers are really, excited and really headstrong about buying a house right now. I've had people just trigger buying and saying, okay, you really want to make sure that your buyer's committed to the purchase, and having a real estate agent representing you, making sure every step of the way that whoever is bringing a contract in on your house is committed to the purchase. I did see through COVID a lot of people trigger buying where they're like, yep, I'll buy it and I'll give you 30 cents. And then attorney review, I'm sure you've seen it, Elizabeth, and I can kind of turn this on you a little bit, where people are kind of getting cold feet. They feel like they made a rash decision. So if you're doing a sale in your neighborhood and you've heard that there's a lot of interest, you may not be crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's, going with a buyer that just comes to you as a for sale by owner, where your agent is representing you properly and making sure that everything is forthcoming, that you're going to get your house under contract and get to the closing with that buyer first time around.
Kathy, do you want to answer?
I do. Angela, you are so right, because how many times do we go on a listing appointment and the seller says, every time someone comes to my house, they tell me they want to buy it, and if I ever put it on the market, to give them a call.
All the time.
They say, so I'd like to exclude those two from my listing. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that, because I put too much time and effort into getting your home on the market. You know what I said?
Yeah, so if they really wanted to buy it, then you don't go on the market so the person next door comes in.
And inevitably they call that one or two people.
That's not really super productive for the seller at all.
Exactly. So it's funny to say, it's very quick. People are very quick to say, I have someone who loves my home and they tell me they'll buy it anytime. They call them up and it doesn't happen. Exactly what Angela was talking about, trigger buying.
All right, we'll call it at that. Ladies, thank you so much. You're obviously very knowledgeable. I have a great admiration for your hustle. And we hinted at some things that we're going to address in further panels down the road, which is the buyers and the overpaying. I'm curious to hear advice for buyers right now, because it is hard out there to be a buyer. It is hard out there to be a buyer's agent. So thanks, ladies. Thanks very much. I really appreciate your time. Have a
Happy-
great day out there.
Well,
Bye,
Leigh,
everybody.
thank
Thanks for coming. And
Thank
thank
you
you,
so
Howard
much,
Hanna.
Leigh.
Thank you for having us.
Great job, Leigh. Good
You're
night.
welcome.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Take care.
So
Bye-bye.
appreciate it.
Thank you all.